this was a team that disappointed me last year. All right, you had so many opportunities with one of the best rushing attacks in the entire country and one of the worst quarterback teams over the last 4 years. We get it. It's nothing new. All right. But this year, guys, they might have a quarterback. All right. The Iowa Hawkeyes legitimately might have a quarterback in South Dakota State transfer, Mark Gronowski. All right. He could be the real deal. And if he is, dude, I put out a future in like some stupid parlay, and it didn't cash because the Timberwolves didn't win the NBA championship. But I had Iowa sneakily as a national champion, and obviously I don't think they will win a national championship. But it is wild how many games we can talk about, how many college football playoff runs Iowa could have made if they had plus quarterback play over the last 5 years. And they just might have it now, CD. I mean, is that wild to think about?
Absolutely not. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule last year, and I don't want to bring up any sore spots for Iowa fans, but you lost in a heck of a game to an Iowa State team that was one game away from going to the playoffs. Right, the best Iowa State team they've had there in a long, long time. You lost at Michigan State when you just struggled, right, and then you lost at UCLA when you played just terrible, and you just gave them that game. Those were your three losses outside of Ohio State. Like, yeah, Ohio State, that was the national champion, whatever. But you were really looking at a playoff spot if you were going to win those three other games. But that was the problem with this style of football that you had. Your margin for error was so, so low. Mark Gronowski gives you that flexibility to like win games, like win shootouts, do different styles. If you're not playing your A plus game in your punting, your special teams, and your defense, you can still win games. I am so bullish on this guy and Hank Brown too, for that matter too, in terms of like potential and future of this room. It has not looked better ever. I don't care. I mean, maybe since CJ Beathard, right? And by the way, that was you were one game away from going to the college football playoff that year. Remember that? That was a heck of a Big Ten championship game against Michigan State. So, yeah, I am very into it. I think Tim Lester probably overachieved, even though you were what 60th in the country, right? In offensive production, I think the Tim Lester experiment was awesome. Here comes Mark Gronowski coming from South Dakota State, winning pedigree, can do a lot of things, can make every throw. Obviously, what he does with his legs is an added bonus. I know he had the injury in the spring. I think he'll be just fine. I'm super excited. Super excited.
I mean, how many years these last couple of years, right? Okay, obviously Caleb Brown left. He's going to UAB now, right? But you've seen exodus after exodus after exodus in the transport of the wide receiver position because players, quite frankly, haven't been confident playing in this offense or with the quarterbacks that have been brought here. Aside from Caleb Brown, who you underutilized, all right, and went to UAB, right? So it's not like teams were clamoring for him, right? You're pretty much running it back with these guys. They didn't leave. In fact, you add Sam Phillips from Chattanooga, who could be dynamic. We'll see how he fits in the system as a little bit undersized player, but feels like the players are here and ready to go too. These skill guys, you get Kamari Moulton there at running back. Now Caleb Johnson is going to be gone at running back. Obviously, he was a stud, but Moulton was solid in his own right. Patterson, like we talked about last year this time, who was going to be the running back. Like we didn't know, right? It took a while for Caleb Johnson to kind of take over that role, and he ended up dominating, right? But we felt good about all of these guys. And Terrell Washington, who's a young guy. I mean, this running back room is going to be fine without Caleb Johnson, I believe. It's the wide receiver room that I'm pretty bullish on for maybe the first time since you and I have been covering college football that I can say that, but I like Jacob Gill. Reese Vanderzee, showed some promise. He's a big guy. He was young. I mean, he's still there learning and growing in the system. Now he's got a quarterback. And then Sam Phillips, of course, come from Chattanooga. This might be like my favorite Iowa wide receiver room that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I also think too, like it'll help just with better quarterback play, like consistent guys. I think Tim Lister did a solid job just keeping guys open last year. You saw how many times did you have people running open down the field and you couldn't get him the ball. No, is Gronowski going to be the most polished passer in the Big Ten? Probably not. Is he going to miss some of those guys? Yeah, but I think he's going to hit them more often than not, and that's going to help you open up other aspects of this offense to actually settle into a legit, a little bit more like obviously very run heavy, but more like West Coast style offense that you'll be able to have guys open over the middle of the field. Yeah, you talked about Vander C, a guy I know Iowa fans are really excited about. He's 6'4", can do a lot of things for you. Will be interesting to see Sam Phillips, transfer coming over from Chattanooga. He is 5'7", 5'8". Maybe not necessarily your every down X receiver necessarily at that size, but hopefully what he can do is give you some spark, draw some plays open, get him the ball in space, and let him get after it. Seth Anderson's also a guy that's been here, it seems like, for a while. Jared Bowie, another guy. Terrence Smith, will be interesting to see him. He was a guy, a pretty solid recruit that I know a lot of teams were after. So, yeah, let's do that too. And then also the tight end room. Like, I like it. It's Iowa. Like, you're going to have solid tight end play. I think Ostrenga and Ortworth were two guys that I thought were very impressive last year. And I think they'll continue to build on that. And they probably have a couple guys waiting in the wings that will just step up and just pick your poison on who it will be. But those two guys, plus, obviously Galen Vander Zee and whoever else steps up in the wide receiver room, I think will be very solid weapons. Like you talked about for the first time in a while. Yeah, let's do it with this offense. It doesn't look like absolute garbage you're trying to talk yourself into being excited about. This is actual potential, actual optimism coming in for this Iowa offense. It's awesome.
In the offensive line, I mean, you lose Colby and you lose Rickman at left tackle as well. But 3 of those 5 guys that are returning, they're all either all Big Ten or all Big Ten honorable mention guys. Take that as you will. And that's not to mention, Cade Piper, who could end up being a really solid player for you at guard. I think, that right guard spot, I think he'll be fine there, but the left tackle spot's definitely going to be a question mark. Like, what young guy, what inexperienced guy is going to have to take that spot for you? I don't know what that's going to look like, but I think as a whole, the offensive line, those 5 across will be fine. So, and as long as that's the case, I think this offense will be better than we've seen it in past years. They were the 69th ranked scoring offense in the country last year, which you're like, okay, what's the big deal? All right, if you've watched Iowa football the last however many years like we have, then you know that the 69th best scoring offense in the country is a big deal for Iowa. To be in almost the top half in college football offensively is massive. And, most of that came from their rushing attack, which, of course, without Caleb Johnson, I'm sure, folks, you, just like us, have our doubts about what that's going to look like without him, because he was special, all right? Like, he was special. CD and I got the chance to watch him in person. Like, he could take over games, and that's exactly what he would do. But I think in the aggregate, this offensive line and the weapons around Gronowski, I mean, this could be a really good offense. All right, and I say really good, relative. All right, if this is a top 40 offense, watch out, is all I'm going to say. Because defensively.
Can I ask you real quick?
Oh, sure.
Before we move on to defense, where do you see this offense rank in the Big Ten? Like, realistically. So you've got your tier ones, right? Or just tiers above Iowa. So like Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, USC, probably Washington's in there. Probably maybe Illinois, right?
Michigan State,
and
maybe.
And you think Nebraska fans will probably tell you Nebraska. But they certainly jump. But
they might not be in that bottom tier.
That's just it. That is exactly the point I was going for is, you're going to group yourself with other teams that have question marks but also have upside and will probably be somewhere, in the middle of here's their floor, right? Here's their ceiling, and they'll probably be somewhere in the middle. And that's going to be awesome. A very fresh change for Iowa. And with this defense, with a lot of guys coming back, Phil Parker still here, man, just gives me nightmares as a Minnesota guy that Phil Parker is still an Iowa Hawkeye coach. But yeah.
I mean, how many guys do you bring back on this defensive line that had multiple sacks last year? I mean, your depth here, your top end talent. I mean, Aaron Graves is back for another run. Ethan Hurkett is back for another run. Max Llewellyn. I mean, and you're bringing in a couple of transfers to boot that add some definite dynamic pieces to this defense, like Jonah Pace, Bryce Hawthorne. Once again, all right, another year, another really good Iowa defensive line. That front seven might take a little bit of a step back because I think Deontay Craig was really good, although I thought he might be better last year than he really was. Of course, Jay Higgins was like one of the better linebackers in college football last year, and he'll be gone. Nick Jackson also gone. Kyler Fisher also gone. But I still think this front seven is going to be a really decent group. Now, linebacker, sure, you lose all those guys in linebacker, but when has Iowa had a bad linebacker core? Like ever. All right. Like, do we trust Phil Parker or what? They didn't take a single linebacker transfer. You lost Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, and Kyler Fisher, and you didn't take a single linebacker transfer. And it's not like they didn't take transfers other places. They took a transfer offensive lineman. They took a transfer receiver. They took several transfer quarterbacks. They took several transfers on the defensive line. And they took transfers in the secondary. Why was that? All right. The linebacker core and running back, besides running back, right? But we know that they're deep there. Why was linebacker the only spot that you didn't take any transfers in? That leads me to believe that, I don't know, one of the best defensive coordinators that we've seen in the last decade believes that he has a pretty decent room right there. So without even going through the names and projecting the talent of these guys, I'm just going to use context clues and be like, okay, this might be a pretty decent linebacker group that Phil Parker has for Iowa.
Yeah, Jaden Harrell, Carson Sherrar. I'll use some names here. Why not? Because they deserve it. They've been waiting in the ranks for them. And, it's their time to shine. And they deserve it because, holy cow, I've been sitting there behind unbelievable linebacker after unbelievable linebacker. I was like, oh, great, Jack Campbell's gone. We can actually run the football against Iowa. Oh, shit, here's Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. It's like, oh, well, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, Kyler Fisher, they're gone. Oh, no, it's going to be Sherrar, Harrell, and a whole bunch of depth. They also have, guys behind them that are, 22, 23 years old as well. So, it's a fun group. I know it's not being talked about a ton, I think, nationally, just because you don't have, stars returning. The one question mark is, legit game experience and, massive, a much more heavier role is going to be placed upon them than they've ever had, right? So we'll see how that does. But if there's one position group in college football that I trust to be okay losing a couple stars, it's this one. And I think they'll be just fine. As long as you're in the right spots there, too. That's a great point you brought up there about it. Not bringing. It's I hear what you're saying. I see what happened. But I'm looking at what you did and what you didn't do in this case. It's pretty telling. With the DB room, moving in there. Oh, wait, no. Have we talked about the defensive line at all?
Well, we did a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I mean, Hurkett, Graves, Llewellyn. I mean, we can talk about the depth.
Yeah. I think Yaya Black, too. I don't know if you mentioned him. He's gone, too. He's been a guy that's been, pretty solid for a numerous amount of years. But I'm also looking at these front guys, right? Front four, right? They run 4-3. I see a bunch of guys that are also 22 and 23 years old. Same with the front seven. So, that's a great recipe for Phil Parker. When Phil Parker's old, man, yeah, he's going to have a really solid defense. And that's going to be, I think, multituded by this defensive back room. I think you lost your stars, right? And I do think the loss of Cooper DeJean hurt you. Quinn Schultz, Sebastian Castro, Jamari Harris, guys that have been there what seems like forever. And if you are a Big Ten football fan, specifically a rival of Iowa, it sure feels like it, man. Those guys could not leave quicker. And so but they still have talent. They still have experience. You still have a cornerback competition, right? I think you're looking at T.J. Hall and Deshaun Lee as two guys that I think are mostly going to be the top two corners. You also have Shaheed Barros and Jalen Watson that'll be fighting for that probably cornerback 2, cornerback 3 spot. It might just depend on what you want, what kind of team schemes you're playing, different body types, which is nice there too. But in terms of that cornerback room, I think it's pretty telling that you had some guys leave and you still feel pretty solid about it, even though there is competition. And also, Phil Parker is like unbelievable, right? With this DB group, so I'm not too worried. But yeah, T.J. Hall and Deshaun Lee at cornerback, I think could emerge as the next like superstars, in this Iowa defense.
Yeah, and you know what? They better hope so, because when you look at their schedule, they play probably, without thinking too hard, probably 4 of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten in Mendoza, Aller.
Wait, I hate to interrupt you here. I'm sorry, Matthew. Can we real quick just appreciate the specialty rooms for Iowa
Oh,
before we
yeah.
move into the schedule?
I mean, this was more in relation to their DB room,
got-
but if you watch our other preview videos, like we don't talk about special teams a ton. There were a couple that we talked about with the SEC and whatever, but like, I mean, every year, how does Iowa have an elite special teams unit? Just some bombers with absolute piss missiles for legs. Just another Australian punter here, another absolute leg of a kicker there. I mean, they've got it all. And then from a kicking standpoint, yeah, but also they're just so solid from a, return standpoint, and also just so disciplined in their lanes. Like it's a spectacle to watch Iowa football. It's kind of like it's the Big Ten version of Beamer ball, I guess.
But like when you have the margins that are in the middle of the Big Ten, like that's that much more amplified. Like you could just change football games, man. I can't tell you. If you're a Big Ten fan in this watching this video, I urge you just comment like what was the moment you knew that the Iowa special teams was going to win them a game against you, man? It's happened too many times. But yeah,
Or if
sorry,
you're a
I didn't want to
Minnesota
cut you off,
fan,
but
when special teams almost lost you a game, but a unique rule for some
yeah.
reason. But yeah, the special teams it's a good unit, and it'll play another impact. It'll be impactful this season, right? But in terms of the schedule with relation to the secondary, and you talked about some of these guys you think are going to be stars. You are playing some of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. You're playing Dylan Raiola. You are playing Jaden Mayava. You are playing Drew Aller. You're playing Fernando Mendoza. If you want to put Aiden Childs at a ceiling, in that category as well, go ahead and throw him in that category. I mean, I can't think of a lot of other quarterbacks in the Big Ten better than like that core group of 4, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all. And we've seen quarterbacks, come to Kinnick and struggle, right? It really struggles. Sometimes the win's a factor, sometimes the crowd, sometimes just seeing a team that's just seems like they're moving in absolute unison where they're all like linked together and they're all just perfectly separated. No separation. You're disciplined. You're having to play from third and long. Those are all spots where Iowa has historically played to its strengths, absolutely. But yeah, that's a great point to bring up there, especially with that position group. You talk about like position matchups that are going to determine potential college football outcomes, college football playoff outcomes, Big Ten standings, bowl games, rivalry games, trophies. Yeah, the Iowa defensive back room versus some of the quarterbacks. That's on their schedule. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the over and win total is 7.5. There's some 6.5s out there, but you gotta eat up some serious juice if you want to take the over 6.5. So we'll pick at 7.5 on the show. I lean over, but at the same time, like there's a lot of question marks on the schedule. You could lose to Iowa State on the road. You could lose to Indiana. You could lose to Wisconsin on the road, right? You could lose to Nebraska. Like those winnable, every single game on the road is what you would classify a winnable game, right? It's not that big of a deal if you play Ohio State on the road, right? It's not that big of a deal if you play Purdue on the road, right? Because Purdue is like you're kind of chalking that up as a win, right? And then Ohio State's not that big of a deal because it's Ohio State, and they're probably going to clobber you whether you play them at home or on the road. But when you're playing the Iowa States, the Rutgers, the Wisconsins, USC, Nebraska, like you start dropping those games on the road, and it kind of comes a little tougher, right? But that's what makes the ceiling of the schedule, like the college football playoff potential of the schedule, greater because you are playing the Penn States and the Indianas and the Oregons at home. So I'll call this a low floor, high ceiling schedule. I'll slightly lean to the over. Not a bettable game for me at all. If I was to take the over, I'd be more inclined to take college football playoffs, but I'm still worried a little bit about the adjustment that Gronowski's going to make, to the Big Ten. Like we've gotten excited about certain quarterbacks with Iowa before, and athletic quarterbacks at that. I do think this is a little bit different, but not enough for me to go all in. And I worry a little bit more about this secondary than you, and what this offense will look like without Caleb Johnson. I think they'll be fine, like I said before, but I can't bet on it in all good faith. But I'll lean to the over.
Well, yeah, those position groups have been such strengths of the past, or at least last year too, with Caleb Johnson, that you like that was your floor, was like Caleb Johnson. Like, oh, nothing else is going right offensively except you have two massive burst runs by Caleb Johnson that just wins us the football game. You don't maybe you have that, Kamar Moulton, maybe you have that. But obviously I think it's gonna be a downgrade. Realistic expectations to be a downgrade. I'm with you on the over. I just have a hard time seeing this roster lose 5 games in the Big Ten. Yeah, you talked about the dynamics of the schedule being a low floor, which I love the way you described that low floor, high ceiling with how many, resume bolster wins they're going to have. But if I look at from September 27th on, man, excluding Minnesota, because that's going to be a tough rivalry game. It's how it is. At Wisconsin, going to be a tough rivalry game as it is. Like all of those teams I'm seeing, like are going to be like either pretty darn good or like better than they were last year. Like you're expecting Nebraska to take a jump. You're expecting Michigan State to take a jump. USC, same thing. Obviously, Penn State is the darling of college football right now. Indiana, we just previewed them in another video. Like they're going to be no slouch either, especially if some of their transfers hit. And that's them early in the season before some of the attrition has hit the offensive line. Obviously, I haven't even talked about Oregon yet and what they bring to the table, physicality, depth-wise, coaching staff, and all that stuff. So it's really hard to see a potential like real college football playoff bid. Now, here's what I will say: like this team makes college football playoff, look out, because that means a couple position groups went really well for them, and you're talking about a team that's going to be battle tested and probably have one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and it won't be like your SMU, like your Boise State, like your Clemson, even Indiana as well. I think it'll be a little bit different in terms of you're talking about a team very capable of winning 1 or 2 or 3 games in that college football playoff. But yeah, but as it sits right here, I like the over 7.5. 8-4 probably seems like where they're going to be, but it just feels very Iowa-esque to be 8-4.